An international platform for Libya's rebel leaders. The UN General Assembly gives the country's seat to its transitional administration. I'm Lise Doucette. Welcome to The Hub. The other headlines this hour on The Hub. Palestinians prepare a UN bid for statehood. President Abbas says they'll go to the UN Security Council.
We go to the United Nations seeking the assistance of God, but armed with the determination of our people that has sacrificed a great deal for the sake of an honourable and free state like the rest of the world.
Pakistan's Prime Minister cancels his visit to the United States as a floods crisis deepens across the south of his country. The personal story of Burma's pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi reaches the big screen. And first on The Hub, the UN General Assembly has given Libya's UN seat to the country's transitional government, the National Transitional Council. The Assembly voted 114 votes for and 17 against. Some governments in South America opposed the move. Others in Africa wanted the decision delayed. And as the world recognized the new transitional government in Tripoli, in Libya itself, forces loyal to Colonel Gaddafi pushed back rebel fighters in his strongholds of Bani Walid and Sirte. Well, let's go first to the diplomacy of the United Nations. We can speak to our correspondent, Barbara Plett. Barbara, was there controversy connected to this move to recognize the NTC?
Well, there was some. There was certainly opposition. This left-leaning group of Latin American countries had officially lodged an opposition to the move. They said that, in essence, what they said is that if they gave the National Transitional Council the seat, this would, in effect, be giving the seat to a faction that had been imposed by foreign intervention, which is, of course, the reference to the NATO bombing campaign that helped the rebels unseat Gaddafi. And they were saying that it should be up to the Libyans to decide who should represent them at the UN. The NTC is not a government. They should at least wait for an interim government or an elected government, which would be even better. So there were a number of countries who spoke, saying things like that: Venezuela, Cuba, Bolivia, and so on. Then, on the other hand, the African Union or some African countries spoke out as well. The conference that represents Southern African states in particular asked for a delay in the vote on procedural grounds, which really reflects the division in the African Union. About 20 members of the African Union have recognized the NTC and others haven't. So he said, well, we'd like to wait till Monday at least, where we can have an AU meeting and decide our own position on this. And also, procedurally, the NTC is not a government, so how can you give the seat to a group that isn't a government? But the vote clearly showed that the NTC had easily enough support in the General Assembly to take over Libya's chair.
So was it the NTC that was pushing most of all? Because after all, the head of the transitional government himself has said he's not going to declare liberation and freedom until all of the territory is liberated, as they put it.
Well, the decision was, or the resolution was drawn up after the NTC applied. The NTC made an application to be the representative of Libya. Of course, the NTC has its backers, including some very powerful Western states, and one would assume that they did so in communication and connection with these states. But the NTC itself made the application to take the seat. And as I said, there is enough support, not only from the West. Egypt spoke out in support, and clearly they took the majority of the General Assembly with them. So it wasn't really a deeply controversial issue, but it does show that there are still divisions here over how the conflict was played out, what the role of the West and the role of the UN was.
Barbara Plett at the UN headquarters, thank you for joining us. Turkey's Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who's now visiting Libya, has urged the pro-Gaddafi strongholds of Sirte and Bani Walid not to spill the blood of other Libyans, but to embrace them and help develop the country.